Hey guys, welcome back to another Lords of War Old World video.
Again,
Yeah.
This is
getting pretty old.
It is getting a little old, but you know what? It gets views, so.
And isn't that why we're all
That's
here?
why we're all here, to get clicks and views. Also, it's the topic du jour. I would continue to have old world conversations here every day, pretty much.
Wow.
Almost every day, I think. Definitely on the weekends when
It's spicy.
Yeah. it just is like it's the topic. Like I don't. I'm sure there's some cross. Like people play Warhammer also play Magic, etc. And
Sure.
It does feel that all the old world stuff does remind me of certain Magic topics, like maybe like not to the same extent as the 35th anniversary or 30th anniversary Magic, which was just pure negativity, but in the sense that it's talked about every day or whatever. Like everyone can, and like we thought might happen, they have a day of the week they've associated with like little updates.
Oh, the Mondays.
So now we have the Almanac Mondays or whatever, where they've been giving us rules. And so today's topic is really about those rules, and kind of so far we don't have all of them. I guess next week we'll get the combat phase.
Yeah.
But I mean, I imagine that's like,
we're starting to see.
I rolled the hit, I rolled the wound.
Yeah. We're starting to see like the game takes shape a little bit from like movement and shooting. So we're getting like kind of like we have a little bit of an idea. So we figured we'd do like a little quick update on it so far and kind of give our thoughts about like what we think.
Well, give a controversial title or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. How else are you going to watch the video?
Yeah.
Not for the content.
Not for the content. It's just titles and Anyway.
So. The first one was movement. The first update was movement, and right off the bat,
wasn't it strategy?
Oh, it was strategy.
Strategy.
Yeah. I completely forgot about that article.
That's okay.
I skipped the strategy phase.
Strategy is we can cover that one really quick because movement is the most important phase of the game, arguably.
Sure.
But strategy is like if you've played any Warhammer in the last at least 10 years, there is their games have these like before movement, like before anything, whatever you want to call it, command phase, hero phase.
Yeah.
So these are parts of the beginning of the turn where you're going to like activate things, do certain spells or abilities. I think we've already outlined that wizards are going to have, kind of like in 40k now, where you have certain spells that activate certain phases. So you're not just going to have a magic phase where you do all of your spell casting.
Pretty big change, actually, from like how we played Warhammer for many years, right?
Yeah, it used to be a very specific part of the turn. You moved and then you cast spells. Now it's like, well, some spells trigger in the strategy phase, some spells trigger in the movement phase, some spells trigger in the shooting phase, some in the combat phase. So you're always going to be casting, which makes me think that casting is going to be a fairly simple operation.
Right.
Probably 1 or 2 dice max, and then your opponent may have 1 or 2 dice to stop it.
It sounds like it might be something like roll 2 dice, add your wizard level or something, and then there's like
things will go off.
Stuff
so
like
it sounds like if you were pining for that, like you have a pool of dice, I have a pool of dice, and we're like carefully using them. It doesn't look like that's going to be part of this game.
I think we could put that in the ground.
It sounds like it. Yeah. So and they haven't showed off any cards. So we're not going back to card game, which is like really way back in time. But
when Magic was an expansion for Warhammer.
It was an expansion. You want to play Magic? You
gotta buy the box set with the cards
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that strategy. Like I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Basically, you're gonna do stuff like your hero. You're gonna have abilities.
Yeah.
Like you might have some stuff to do with your wizard in that phase.
Probably
too.
Some psychology cleanup. When you get a rally unit
Stupidity tests, things like that. Probably. Yeah. Rallying troops, all that fun stuff. Yeah, so it's like a cleanup phase almost.
Probably. Yeah. Okay. So the movement.
So this is where I started to like already notice. I'm like, okay, this game's going to be a little different than what we were used to, but also kind of very similar as well in other ways. Yeah.
Different but the same.
So they've kind of defined units in the sense of like the way that they kind of form the formations. So it basically like closed order means you're kind of rank and filed. And then open and skirmish kind of means like you're either like sort of ranked but like have a more of a loose formation, or like you're literally like skirmished, which means like you're spread apart by nature too.
It sounds like open, at least from what we could gather. It's not super detailed, but to me it makes me think of giving your units the ability to like quickly turn or like
it might be
change
like
formation.
it might be like something fast cap units have. Like they might be like open formation units.
That makes me think of like because again, so for people that didn't know, like in previous, at least 8th edition, most units moved, pretty, like if you're a rank and flank, like 20 dudes in a 5x4 or something, you're just kind of moving in straight lines.
Yeah.
And then you had these like swift cavalry units that could basically do whatever they wanted. And if you're an elven swift cavalry unit, you often had extra rules where you could move through terrain and like you could just move models any way you wanted, basically. And which was actually very powerful because you could get to spots that the other units couldn't. So it sounds like maybe that'll be like something you declare. Maybe you can then you might lose.
Yeah, so it also sounds like you if your unit's organized in certain ways, you're considered like a marching or combat formation.
Yeah.
So like if you're wider than you're deep, you're in combat formation. And if you're deeper than you are wide, you're in a marching formation.
Column, yeah.
And you don't get rank bonuses when you're in like a marching column, but you can go 3 times as fast or something crazy like that, which is kind of interesting.
Well, yeah.
So that's pretty new.
That's pretty new.
You could never go that fast.
No.
You could go twice as fast, but not 3 times as fast.
That's true.
So
I don't know if I would do that. But
yeah, that seems kind of reckless. I remember like old fantasy, you barely wanted to march at all because you're like, is this like cagey game of like,
very
okay,
cagey,
I don't want to be in his like charge range. Mm-hmm. And now, especially, we can talk about this is like when you fail a charge now, they talked about this in the article. Mm-hmm. You go your full distance.
Oh, you shove right up there.
So you go all the way. So before it was like you would go half your move, or you would go your highest dice or something like that. Now it's like you're really putting yourself out there if you fail a charge, which is
super massive if you're a cavalry unit because they usually move like 3d6 or something or whatever it was plus their move or whatever.
Yeah.
So. So now you could be, instead of moving like 6 inches up, you might move like 12 inches up, and the unit's 13 inches away. You're basically standing in front of them, just open to get.
You're gonna get clapped on the next turn. Yeah. Basically.
Because if you did a half move on your fail charge, then you can move up some other units nearby to kind of like shore up that flank and form a new line.
Or maybe the Great Eagle flies in and does the
yeah.
The classic move.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Get ready for those again.
Oh
yeah. The tactical eagle or whatever.
Yeah. So they also talked about like the obviously the actual order of the movement phase, like the declare charges is first,
which is pretty much
that's pretty standard. That's kind of how it's always been. They kind of talked about how pre-measuring is going to be back. Thankfully,
yeah.
I'm happy to say we're past the age of no pre-measuring.
Yeah,
I don't
the 90s
personally miss it at all.
The early 2000s. Yeah,
the sort of like weird sort of pseudo skill of like learning distances and stuff. I personally don't think that's like strategy. That's just like a skill that you learn.
Yeah,
sort of like that seems like it's 30 inches away. I don't miss that at all.
No, it makes no sense. Like I mean, even in reality, like people generally knew how far things would shoot and move.
Yeah, and I always thought like, my stone thrower crew probably knows how to operate a stone thrower better than I do. Like
yeah, they could dial it in. Yeah. I mean, the no guessing would be no thanks. But I think regardless of what you think about it from a tabletop point of view, from actually playing the game, it's just nonsense. It just makes the game full of bad feels and weird situations and like it should be like. Everyone always wants these games to be more chess-like. Well, then the only way to make it more chess-like is for the movement to be like pre-measured, so that everyone knows exactly where everything can go.
Guessing in chess.
There's no guessing in chess.
It's hexes. Squares. It's
can move this exactly here, and everyone knows it.
Yeah, and you can literally count the squares and can see
decide where things are going.
Yeah. So I think that's good. I'm happy to see that. And then what was something else? Oh, one thing I really notice, and I'm not going to say I don't like this yet, but like it's a red flag.
This is the mini hot take
for
alert.
Me. Yeah. Is the idea that like because they brought wheeling back obviously. So wheeling, for those of you that don't know, you have like these like rectangle shaped units essentially, and you can move in a straight line your full distance, but anytime you want to turn, you're basically measuring that movement from the far corner.
So they call it,
it's like a wheel movement. Yeah. So we used to have these like little gizmo gadgets that helped us.
You literally had to play with like extra widgets and things that Games Workshop didn't really make until later, sort of.
I think they kind of made them maybe like in cardboard later on.
So the most this is the thing that hopefully launches if they've gotten their focus groups right. is they'll need to sell a stupid little 90-degree
Yeah.
like widget thing that allows you to like check sight arcs and to facilitate wheeling. And wheeling is probably the most like controversial or like most screwed up or most combative or argumentative rule in wargaming. Like no one is able to do this thing properly or correctly. Or
it's almost as bad as the directional indicator on the scatter die, which no one seems to be able to follow.
Yeah,
either.
because you're looking at a tiny arrow, and you're never, and especially if you roll it in the middle of the table, you can't get above it completely to get it perfect. Like, and then you need to, hopefully get a laser. And the other problem with the scatter thing is like it's just always like if it was like across the die, you could somewhat like draw that line, but it's just this tiny anyway.
Yeah.
So scatter would be just below wheeling, in my opinion, or about the same. Scattering, I could kind of like, because people then would be like, well, no, it only hits 2 models and not 4 models, and but the wheeling,
get ready.
The wheeling was always super painful, and I don't know why, because even with the arc on the table, the little widget, and you'd show the person, look, I put it here, and then I'm turning 1, 2, and then moving, and it would still cause. I think the problem was like, you've got these trays of guys, and like, as you know, even 30 plastic models on a little plastic tray is not very heavy. So it's very easy to shift this, like, just incidentally. Like, you're not trying to. And then what also invariably happens is you start doing this maneuver, and then something else isn't working, or you decide that, oh, actually, I don't want to do this anymore because it's not going to get me what I want. Yeah. So then you try and put it back, and it's like it's just a disaster. And so many people. Now the reason why people get super upset is really, because of the 90-degree side arcs. So what you would do is like they haven't revealed it in the almanac, but I'm going to assume this because this is like another like fixture of this game that makes it what it is what determines a front or a flank or rear.
Right. Yeah.
So what you would do is you take the opposing unit, put these arcs down, check where they are, and then if most of your unit that's trying to make the charges, let's say would get into the flank, then that's where you're going.
Right. Now here's where it gets.
But if you're wheeling midway, then you can start really out of the flank and get in the flank.
Exactly. So one of the things I loved about 8th edition is they really did try to simplify that as much as they could. Yeah. So the only thing you did when you checked the charge was you measured the distance between the 2 units, the closest points. Yes. And that was the only number you used.
Correct. Yeah.
So you could be like, I'm 8 inches apart, and your opponent could be like, that looks right to me. Yeah. And then no matter what, if you roll an 8, those units will be fighting.
They will be fighting, yeah.
So now, here's where it gets really fun. So take all the things Jay just said about wheeling, and now add them to the charging.
Right.
Because they've said in the almanac that you will have to wheel as part of your charge move now.
Right.
Yikes.
Yeah, so now, so how do you calculate that? I guess you then...
I feel like, so here's where it gets really fun. I feel like now there's no opponent consent before a charge.
Right.
It's more, I'm charging, and then you both kind of go, okay, hold your breath.
Right.
And then you roll your dice, and you start to move your unit, and your opponent watches you like...
slowly creak it forward.
Like, as you move your full distance, and sees if you touch.
Right.
And if you don't, you fail your charge, and you're there, which is kind of what they said the rule is. Yeah. But like, man, that's going to be those are going to lead to some tense moments. Oh, you pivoted wrong.
Yes.
You pivoted a little bit. Oh, you messed up the whole charge now.
Messed it up.
Yeah.
And then this
which between friends, perfectly fine.
Should be
very reasonable. Perfectly. Should be. Depends how much you need the win.
How much you need that.
But
if you tell me you need it, I'll give it to you.
For all those tournament players. Like I would be, maybe screaming a little bit inside right now, overseeing that particular.
Now the little asterisk is like all we have is this little article.
Yes.
We don't have any other really good diagrams or maybe even.
They haven't even said how wheeling works technically. Really. Right. They haven't said that it takes 1 inch to move 1 inch of a wheel. So
we are drawing.
Maybe it is maybe wheeling is cleaner now.
I hope so.
You saw the fear in Jay's eye there. Oh God, I hope so.
And this is like, we both played. Like, I mean, we both worked for Games Workshop for some time. And when I was before I was working, well, while I was working there and before I was working there, I was playing a lot of 6th and 7th edition fantasy, and there was no pre-measuring in those games.
Yeah.
So it was even more disgusting. Like these how like there was always problems and arguments and issues with whether units made it or not, and in those times you didn't get this. So in 8th edition they instituted something called like couple small rules. There was like given an inch, which was meant to like if things were like half an inch or like almost an inch apart, like even though like if units did touch, like Chris mentioned with the shortest distance in the die roll, and like there was still something kind of in the way, they just said just fudge it basically. The rule book said because it's like just to get on with the game and make it go, and that went a long way. So that didn't exist before that, and there was also. I think there was also like I don't know, it was a freewheel or like they call it close the door or something. So
Closing the door, yeah.
So they had rules that also
that
like helped click units together. Again, once they made the shortest distance, then things would just kind of click together on their own. Which meant that like extra inches were given.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there was some really good exploits to that as well.
Yeah,
like you could, and because of other rules, you could close the door really heavily in your favor.
Yeah.
To maximize the models you wanted to fight.
You rolled 8, but you're getting like a 10 or 11.
Against a hero, or you could line up how you wanted the opponent to flee.
Yeah.
Because it was always center to center, so like if you close the door in a certain way, you could make sure they'd flee through their own units and maybe bucket off the board. Or there was a lot of like little nuances to it that you can learn.
So now we get into like the center to center thing is always they haven't really described this, but like this they've typically used that as the measure of how to figure out what the direction something's supposed to go. And that is another like how do you judge this on the table like correctly, because like it's somewhat easy if the unit has an odd number of guys, because there will be a guy, literally a rank in the center, a column of guys in the middle of their unit that you can kind of use as a reference. When it's like even numbers or the unit's on a funny angle, like it just And so that was another rule that got typically screwed up, because what's supposed to happen in these cases is like this unit that's fleeing or breaking or running away or chasing is supposed to go in this like specific line, and then that'll determine what units they like end up running through or cascading through, and then there was more rules with like what happens when the units like if your own unit finishes a move on top of another one of your guys, do you end up just on the other side? And then anyway, all this to say that like the fantasy rule set has a lot of like nuanced specific situations that make it like there's a lot for them to try and write and make work that like. Yeah, it's
and it's unlike any kind of modern game. Like there has to be. It reminds me a bit of Infinity in the sense like that you really have to be like partners in getting through the game.
Yeah.
And if one of the people playing is kind of like not playing along on that same level, it's going to be a slog. Like the rules require a lot of cooperation, I guess is the best way to say it. Yeah.
And you have to kind of be willing to kind of just like accept things, I guess. Like I don't know if that makes sense. Like, so a good example. Actually, I should link it. So there's if you want to go way back in time, there's a battle report that myself and Ash from Gorilla Miniature Games recorded here in the store. So you get to see the store. It's like watching something from like a prehistoric
video.
thing. Like everything looks weird. Like the store has like the walls look weird. There's like no stuff in the store. I'm 9 years younger or whatever, which is weird to me. And anyway, we're playing this game. And there's so many, and in this game, Ash and I are both like people that have played many games of 8th. We're not like newbies or whatever, but we make like a bunch of mistakes because there's just so many of these like little nitty gritty rules that, and we did something wrong, and you know the comments are harsh because they're like, oh, these guys aren't doing it, like these guys can't even play this game, and I'm like, well, that's just how it was. Like it didn't matter how seasoned you were. There's always like these little situations that came up, and anyway, like it was just like so many dense rules, but the main thing, we got through the game in a reasonable fashion, and we didn't get too argumentative because we just was like, okay, you know, if Ash or someone, or if I said no, I think it's this, we're like, okay, and we just kind of like moved along. We didn't like let it bog down too much, and you have to be, like Chris said, you have to be accepting of like some of this stuff to get through it, because it gets too. And the game's kind of harsh. Like, it's a punishing game.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If people think modern war games are harsh, like, you know, 8th edition, 7th, like, there was like spells you could cast that could like literally end your game in a phase. You know, like
and that's what happens in this.
your wizard could blow, like, you know, I played Undead Armies a lot.
Mm-hmm.
like your wizard could blow up, and then you could you pack your stuff up or whatever. Like that's not a thing anymore, right? Like that doesn't really exist in like Age of Sigmar or 40k. Like
it's pretty hard. Yeah. Usually the way the rules are, you can kind of insulate yourself. They've tried to add things to make it less punishing. But that game was historically
very punishing.
Yeah. So, and that's, I guess, part of the charm. I guess you know. We'll see what the combat rules are next week.
Well, just quickly, the shooting article I think is like pretty.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, shooting.
Pretty like simple.
There was
like,
no
to get
surprises
through.
there.
Yeah, so like if you played like any previous edition of Warhammer in the last 15, 20 years, it's pretty much, you know, you got your ballistic skill.
Yep.
You know, you have your little chart that you follow. So if your ballistic skill is 3, you hit on 4s, and then for every point it goes up, you hit one better, and for every point it goes down, you hit one worse. And then there's modifiers for long range,
moving,
for cover and moving. Well, actually, they didn't mention moving yet, so
I think
wondering.
They did.
Did they?
I think they did.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yeah. There's modifiers, and then the one thing that I will say is it is different than 8th edition, because shooting, like combat, was all modified. Like the armor save modifier was all done through simply the strength profile.
Right.
So
they
it was like
now
they have a separate category for armor penetration. So that's going to give the game. I kind of like that with shooting. We'll see if it happens with combat, but that's going to give the game a lot more nuance for like the types of weapons they have. Like you can have like a really high strength weapon that doesn't punch through armor, and vice versa, right? So you can have a low strength weapon that does a ton of armor pen, like gas or something like that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I did like that.
That is good.
I did like that. Yeah, that is a good call. Yeah, and then you can have exactly all these unique equipments that do. The other small thing actually is the to wound chart is slightly different as well.
You can wound tougher things a little bit easier.
Yeah,
now. Like not easier, but like
they basically showed like a strength 3 bow
can still
wound up to toughness 8 or something.
Yeah, which is like I think 1 or 2 points higher than it was before.
Exactly.
So that's good. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I don't like those situations where like you're like, my God, I can't hurt this at all. Like that's brutal,
it's
right?
Really bad.
And let's be real, 6s is 6s. Like 6s is garbage. Like if you're already in that situation, it's already hopeless. But like at least it's possible.
Yeah, that's another like small peeve of mine when people are upset about that last guns can bring down a land raider. I'm like, do they though?
Does this actually ever happen?
Like roll the dice, you know, do some, you know,
roll a billion dice. I'll make a billion
hundreds
saves,
and hundreds of
and
dice,
then
maybe you'll get lucky. So I guess combat phase will probably have obviously AP and all that AP and strength from shooting will likely this is our like premonition, whatever, will likely factor in there, and then
it'd be wild if they did types of weapons.
I think
have
they should.
APs. That would be really interesting.
They should, like a great weapon should naturally be something -2.
Really interesting,
whatever.
Yeah.
And then I imagine, you know, they'll talk about like how many ranks fight. Maybe that'll also determine based on your formation. Maybe if that open formation gets more ranks. Or something.
See, there's some cool. Yeah, there's some potential there. I mean, also adds more nuance to the rules, but also adds more things you got to think about. So there's always that double-edged sort of like you kind of want them, but you also kind of don't want them. It's sort of
one of our like kind of long time. This one of our customers, Dino, who I used to sell Warhammer 2 when I worked at Square One many years ago, and he was asking me a question for some reason about 7th Ed fantasy because he was playing with his friends. Yeah. And I was reminded of the like how like so many like these situational had to do with like did a model on a certain mount get like share the strength or toughness or or something?
Right. Yeah.
Did they could you no? It was whether you could put them in a unit, and did they count as a rank, and then you had to figure out what was a monster and what this was like in a weird in between zone. And so anyway, I'm kind of sidetracking into just like God. I hope we don't have this either. I hope it's like much cleaner where we don't have these like. I guess it was a problem back then because they made models on wacky. Sometimes models had no bases, and I guess they don't do that anymore. So
there's a lot more universality to like Games Workshop's line, I'd say, which kind of helps with a lot of those problems.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see. We'll try and do a follow-up video next week after Combat comes out. What do you guys think? Do you think it's the game's too complicated so far? Do you like the changes they're making?
Do you want a complicated game? Do you want what do you want from it? Do you want it to be like a modern 40k in AOS with like fantasy vibes, or do you want it to be like No, strictly.
Yeah. Do you want that old school sort of
Old
like
Warhammer.
this game is Warhammer? Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Which I feel like a lot of people do want that. They're craving that.
Yeah. Or they think they're craving that.
Yeah.
See the bias.
We're gonna see the updates too. We're hopefully seeing Tomb Kings this Friday, maybe with
There's
the updates.
a Warhammer update. Yeah.
Please, no old skeletons.
Please no
You
old
can't do
skeletons.
it. You can't do that.
Can't do
You
that.
can't. That would be brutal. I'm just putting it up.
Okay, I guess really before we go,
I don't know if I can see.
What are you hoping for? New skeletons? Is that your ask?
You got to. So here's the problem. This could be a separate video.
Yeah.
But if they're gonna redo the skeletons, they'd have to redo the horsemen, the chariots. That's 3 kits now.
This is at least.
Are they doing 3 kits?
Tomb Guard maybe.
Tomb Guard are okay. They're
newish.
passable.
They were newish. Yeah.
Yeah. So like this is where I'm like really skeptical. If they do the same thing they did with Bretonians, are they just gonna do a new unit and a character on a dragon or something?
Oh,
and then leave everything alone?
Here's my stupid guess.
Okay.
Because they're old. Is what if they made plastic with shop to you?
I mean, that would be amazing.
Would you take that and keep the old crappy skeletons, or what?
Why am I trading for these horrible things?
You can't have both.
I can't have both. Apparently,
we learned this from the Bretonian thing. You can't have both. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Usually, ask for foot knights for forever, but you abandon everything else.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
You know what? I already had this conversation with a customer this week. I was like, you know what? I have no problem converting the skeletons again because I did it. Well, 10, 12 years ago.
But those skeletons don't exist anymore.
They don't, but there's new skeletons, and I looked at them. They look great. The Soul Blade skeletons look great.
Yeah, but they're not Tomb Kings.
I can convert them.
Okay.
I can do it.
They don't have the scimitar weapons.
You're bogged down in the details here. You want pumpkin hand guy?
No one wants.
Nobody wants pumpkin hand guy.
No one wants any pumpkins. It's not Halloween anymore.
Like and subscribe if you like this. Thanks so much and share, and we'll see you next time, guys. Cheers.
All right.